Wyoming Territory, 1867. A mother's frozen fingers clawed through snow searching for anything. Roots bark, frozen scraps, while her two daughters watched with hollow eyes. She hadn't eaten in 6 days, the girls in 4. When she found the rotten apples behind the stranger's barn, she wept, not from shame, from relief. But the footsteps behind her meant discovery, meant punishment, meant losing everything she had left. What happened next would test everything she believed about kindness, survival, and whether broken people could ever be whole again. Stay until the end. Comment your city. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you haven't already, subscribe. You won't want to miss what comes next. The first apple was soft in Maggie Collins's hand, brown and spotted with rot, but she pressed it to her lips like salvation. "Mama!" Emma's voice cut through the November air. "Someone's coming!" Maggie froze. Her 9-year-old stood rigid beside the barn wall, her thin body pressed flat against weathered wood. Behind her, little Lily crouched in the dead grass, 3 bruised apples clutched to her chest like treasures. Footsteps, heavy boots on frozen ground. "Don't move," Maggie breathed. "Don't make a sound." But Lily was already crying those silent tears that had become her only way of speaking over the past month. The child's shoulders shook. The apples trembled in her arms. The footsteps stopped. Maggie turned slowly, positioning herself between her daughters and whatever came next. Her hand found Emma's shoulder, pulled her close. She'd been caught stealing before. In Lawrence, Kansas, a shopkeeper had dragged her through the streets by her hair while the townspeople watched. In Independence, a farmer had threatened worse. This time would be no different. The man who rounded the corner was tall, broad across the shoulders, with a face weathered by sun and wind, and something else. Something that looked like old grief, worn smooth by time. He wore a sheepskin coat, good boots, a hat pulled low against the cold. His eyes moved from Maggie to the girls, then to the rotten apples scattered in the grass. Maggie lifted her chin. She'd learned that much at least. Never cower, never beg. It only made them crueler. "I wasn't stealing," she said. The lie hung between them, thin and desperate. The man's expression didn't change. He looked at the apples. He looked at Lily's tear-streaked face. He looked at Emma standing rigid with terror. Then he did something Maggie didn't expect. He took off his coat. "Ma'am," he said, and his voice was quieter than she'd anticipated, rough at the edges like he didn't use it often. "Your girls are shaking. Take this." Maggie stared at the offered coat. Sheepskin. Warm. Worth more than everything she owned. "I don't want your coat. I reckon you don't want a lot of things." He held it out further. "But your daughters need it. That one there." He nodded toward Lily. "She ain't stopped shivering since I spotted you. How long since they ate proper?" Maggie's jaw tightened. "We're fine." "No, ma'am, you ain't." He set the coat on the ground between them when she wouldn't take it. "I've got stew on the stove. Coffee, too. There's enough for 4. We don't need charity." "Didn't say it was charity." He straightened, met her eyes. "I said there's stew. You can work for it if that suits your pride better. I've got dishes need washing. Wood needs stacking. But one way or another, those girls are eating hot food tonight. That ain't negotiable." Maggie felt something crack in her chest. Anger, maybe. Or the last brittle edge of her pride. "Why?" The word came out harsh. "Why would you do this? You don't know us. You don't owe us anything." The man was quiet for a long moment. Behind her, Lily had stopped crying. Emma's hand found Maggie's and squeezed tight. "Because someone did it for me once," he said finally. "When I needed it and didn't deserve it. And because there's enough cruelty in this world without me adding to it." He turned toward the cabin, not looking back. "Doors open. Come in when you're ready." He walked away. Maggie stood there, her daughters pressed against her, the November wind cutting through her thin dress, and watched him go. "Mama!" Emma's voice was careful testing. Is it safe? God help her. Maggie didn't know. Pick up the coat, she said. Wrap it around your sister. The cabin was small but solid, built by hands that knew what they were doing. A fire burned in the stone hearth, and the smell of cooking meat filled the air, rich, savory, impossible. Lily had stopped at the threshold, her eyes wide. Is this heaven? She whispered. Maggie's throat closed. When had her 5-year-old forgotten what a warm house looked like? The man she still didn't know his name was at the stove ladling stew into tin bowls. He glanced over his shoulder. Sit. Table's right there. Emma moved first, always the brave one, pulling Lily toward the rough-hewn chairs. Maggie followed more slowly, her eyes tracking every detail. One bed in the corner neatly made. A rifle above the door. Books on a shelf, more books than she'd expected. A photograph on the mantel of a young woman with kind eyes. Name's Samuel Thornton, he said, setting bowls before the girls. Most folks call me Sam. Margaret Collins. She hesitated. Maggie. These are my daughters, Emma and Lily. Pleased to meet you. He set a bowl in front of her too, then sat across the table with his own. Eat. Talk later. The girls didn't need to be told twice. Lily grabbed her spoon with both hands and buried it in the stew, eating so fast she choked. Emma ate more carefully, but her eyes never left her bowl, tracking every bite like it might disappear. Maggie couldn't eat. Not yet. She watched her daughters instead, watching the color slowly return to Lily's cheeks, watching Emma's rigid shoulders finally begin to relax. When's the last time they had hot food? Sam asked quietly. Maggie calculated. Lawrence. The church lady who'd given them soup before her husband found out and threw them into the street. That had been 12 days, she said. Maybe 14. Sam's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. We're not beggars, Maggie added, and she hated how defensive it sounded. We're traveling. My husband went to California for the gold. I'm trying to find him. Long way to California. Yes. Dangerous way too, especially in winter, especially with children. Maggie's spine stiffened. I'm aware. Sam held up a hand. I ain't judging, just observing. He pushed back from the table. You want coffee? I want to know what you expect in return. The words came out harder than she'd intended. Sam turned to look at her, and for the first time, Maggie saw something flicker in those gray eyes. Not anger. Something sadder. I expect you to eat your supper, he said. I expect you to let those girls sleep somewhere warm tonight. And tomorrow, if you're set on leaving, I'll point you toward town and give you provisions for the road. He poured coffee into a tin cup and set it before her. That's all I expect, Mrs. Collins. Nothing more. Maggie wrapped her hands around the cup, feeling the warmth seep into her frozen fingers. Why? She asked again, because she couldn't understand. In 4 months of walking, she'd met cruelty and indifference in equal measure. Kindness had been so rare she'd stopped looking for it. You don't know me. I'm a stranger who was stealing from you. You were feeding your children. Sam sat back down across from her. That ain't stealing. That's surviving. Most people don't see the difference. Most people ain't worth a damn. Despite everything, Maggie felt her lips twitch. Almost a smile. She couldn't remember the last time she'd almost smiled. Emma had finished her stew and was watching them with those 2 old eyes. Mama, can we stay just for tonight? Maggie looked at her daughter. At the hope she was trying to hide because hope had hurt her too many times. At Lily already drowsing in her chair, her belly full for the first time in weeks. Just for tonight, Maggie said. And we work for our keep. I won't take charity. Fair enough. Sam nodded toward the corner. Bed's yours. I'll take the chair by the fire. I can't take your bed. You can and you will. His voice brooked no argument. Those girls need proper rest. The bed's soft and the quilts are warm. Ain't no sense in them sleeping on the floor when there's better available. Maggie wanted to argue, wanted to maintain some semblance of control over her own circumstances. But Lily had already slid from her chair and was stumbling toward the bed like it was calling her name. "Thank you," Maggie said quietly, and meant it. Later, after the girls were asleep, Maggie sat by the fire with a cup of coffee she didn't deserve and watched Sam whittle something from a piece of pine. "That woman in the photograph," she said. "Your wife." Sam's hands stilled on the wood. "Was." "I'm sorry." "Me too." He resumed whittling the knife, moving in slow, careful strokes. "Catherine. Her name was Catherine. She died 2 years back." Maggie knew she shouldn't ask, knew it was none of her business. But the fire was warm, and the coffee was good, and her daughters were sleeping safely for the first time in months, and something about this quiet man made her want to understand. "How?" Sam was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. "Then, childbirth. She was carrying our first." His voice stayed steady, but his hands had stopped moving. "I rode to town for the doctor. 15 miles there, 15 back. Rode that horse until he nearly dropped. The doctor came." "No." The word was flat. Empty. Said he was too busy. Said he'd come when he could. "I begged him, Mrs. Collins. Got down on my knees in that man's parlor and begged him to save my wife. He closed the door in my face." Maggie's chest ached. "Sam. Rode home alone. She died that night." He set down the knife, stared into the fire. "Both of them. Her and the baby. I held her hand while she went. Wasn't nothing else I could do." The cabin was silent, except for the crackling of flames and the soft breathing of sleeping children. "That's why you help people," Maggie said. It wasn't a question. "That's why I help people." Sam finally looked at her. "Because I know what it's like to need help and not get it. I know what it costs, and I swore on Catherine's grave that if I ever got the chance to be the person that doctor should have been, I'd take it. Every time. No matter what." Maggie thought about all the doors that had closed in her face over the past 4 months. All the people who'd looked through her like she was already dead. All the times she'd needed help and found none. "You're a good man," she said. "I'm trying to be." Sam picked up his whittling again. "Most days that's all any of us can do." They sat in silence after that, but it was a comfortable silence, the kind that didn't need filling. Maggie watched the flames dance and listened to her daughters breathe and let herself feel just for a moment something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Safe. Morning came gray and cold, and with it a decision Maggie had been dreading. "Storm's coming," Sam said, standing at the window with his coffee. "I can smell it. Should hit by afternoon." Maggie had risen early, washed the dishes, tidied the cabin, tried to make herself useful. The girls were still sleeping, their thin bodies finally getting the rest they desperately needed. How bad? Bad enough. A few days, maybe? Wyoming winters don't play nice. A few days. A few days of shelter and food and warmth. A few days of not walking, not starving, not slowly dying, one frozen mile at a time. "We should leave now," Maggie said, even as everything in her screamed against it. "Before it hits. We've imposed enough." Sam turned to look at her. "You take those girls out there today, you'll all be dead by nightfall. We've survived worse." "Have you—" His eyes were steady on hers. "Have you really—" Maggie thought about the last 4 months. The hunger. The cold. The nights when she'd lain awake wondering if the girls would still be breathing come morning. The afternoon in Kansas when Emma had collapsed and wouldn't wake up for 6 terrifying hours. The moment last week when Lily had stopped talking altogether, had just stopped. "No," she admitted. "We haven't." "Then stay. Not because I'm asking. Not because of charity or kindness or anything else. Stay because your daughters need it and you need it, and that storm will kill you if you try to walk through it." Sam moved closer, his voice softening. "Stay, because sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is accept help when they need it." Maggie's eyes burned. She would not cry. She hadn't cried since Ohio, since Robert had walked away, promising to send for them, since she'd stood in the doorway of their foreclosed farm and watched her whole life disappear down a dusty road. "One more day," she said, "just until the storm passes. However long you need. I can work. I'll earn our keep." "I know you will." Sam almost smiled. "You ain't the type to sit idle. I figured that out the minute you told me you weren't stealing while standing there with stolen apples in your hands." Maggie felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I wasn't." "You were. And I don't blame you for it. A mother does what a mother has to do." He gestured toward the stove. "There's bacon if you want to start breakfast. I need to check on the horses before the weather turns." He pulled on his coat and hat and stepped out into the cold, leaving Maggie standing alone in the cabin with her sleeping daughters and the unfamiliar feeling of not being afraid. The storm hit that afternoon just as Sam had predicted. Wind screamed across the prairie, driving snow so thick you couldn't see 5 feet ahead. The cabin creaked and groaned, but held firm, and inside, the fire burned bright and steady. Emma had woken with questions. Where were they? Who was that man? Were they safe? And Maggie had answered them as honestly as she could. "He's helping us." "Why?" "Because he's a good person." Emma's eyes, those 2 old eyes that had seen too much, searched her mother's face. "Are we staying?" "Just until the storm passes." "And then?" Maggie didn't have an answer for that. She'd been so focused on the next step, the next mile, the next meal, that she'd stopped thinking about what came after. California was still hundreds of miles away. Robert might not even be there, might not want them, even if he was. "We'll figure it out," she said, because that was all she could offer. Lily had found the whittled piece Sam had been working on the night before, a horse she realized now small and delicate, and was playing with it by the fire, making it gallop through the air. "Careful with that," Sam said, coming in from checking the livestock. Snow dusted his shoulders and his cheeks were red with cold. "Ain't finished yet." "It's a horse." Lily's voice was barely a whisper. She'd started talking again sometime during the night, but the words came slowly, like she was remembering how. "That's right." Sam crouched down to her level. "You like horses." Lily nodded solemnly. "Well, when it's finished, it's yours. If that's all right with your mama." Lily looked at Maggie with wide, hopeful eyes. Such a small thing, a wooden horse. But to a child who'd had nothing for months, it might as well have been the moon. "That's very kind," Maggie said. "Thank you." Sam just nodded and went to hang up his coat. Simple, easy, like giving wasn't something that cost him anything at all. Maggie didn't understand that. She'd grown up learning that everything had a price, that kindness always came with strings, that you never got something for nothing. Her own father had made sure she understood that lesson well. But Sam seemed to operate by different rules. Rules she didn't know how to read. That night, while the storm raged outside and the girls slept curled together under warm quilts, Maggie told Sam about Robert. "We had a farm in Ohio," she said, her voice low so as not to wake the children. "Small, but it was ours. Robert worked hard. I worked hard. We thought if we just kept working, everything would be fine. But it wasn't. No." Maggie stared into the fire. 3 bad harvests in a row. Then the bank came calling. Robert couldn't take it, losing the farm, losing everything we'd built. He started talking about California, about gold, about how we could start over and build something even better. You didn't want to go. It wasn't a question. Sam had a way of seeing things, of understanding without being told. I wanted to stay, find work. Pay off the debt slowly. But Robert, she shook her head. Robert needed to believe there was something better waiting. He needed to believe he could fix it. So he left. He said he'd send for us. Said he'd find gold, make a fortune, send money for tickets on a wagon train. He kissed me goodbye and promised everything would be fine. Maggie's voice hardened. That was June. I haven't heard from him since. Sam was quiet for a moment. You still believe he's in California? I don't know what I believe anymore. Maggie's hands tightened in her lap. I just know I couldn't stay in Ohio. The farm was gone, we had no money, and people were starting to look at us like we were already ghosts. So I took the girls and started walking. Figured if Robert wouldn't send for us, I'd find him myself. And if you get to California and he's not there, the question hung in the air, heavy and impossible. Then we find something else, Maggie said finally. We keep going, we survive. That's not a plan, that's desperation. Sometimes desperation is all you've got. Sam nodded slowly. Fair enough. But Mrs. Collins? Maggie. She wasn't sure why it mattered, but it did. Call me Maggie. Maggie. He said her name carefully, like he was testing how it felt. You don't have to keep running until you drop. There are other options. Like what? Like staying somewhere, finding work, building something instead of chasing something that might not exist. Maggie laughed, but there was no humor in it. You make it sound easy. I didn't say it was easy. I said it was an option. Sam leaned forward. You've got 2 daughters who need stability. Who need to know where their next meal's coming from. Who need to stop being afraid all the time. California's a dream. Maybe a good dream, maybe not. But it won't mean anything if those girls don't survive the journey to get there. The words hit harder than Maggie wanted them to, because he was right. She knew he was right. She'd known it for weeks, maybe months, but she'd been too stubborn to admit it. I can't give up, she said, and her voice cracked. If I give up, what was all of it for? The walking, the starving, the suffering. If I stop now, it all means nothing. It doesn't mean nothing. Sam's voice was gentle. It means you survived. It means you kept those girls alive when most people would have given up a long time ago. That counts for something, Maggie. That counts for a lot. Maggie felt the tears she'd been holding back for 4 months finally push past her defenses. She turned away, tried to hide them, but Sam saw. Of course he saw. He didn't reach for her, didn't try to comfort her with empty words. He just sat there, solid and steady, while she fell apart. I don't know what to do, she whispered. I've been so focused on moving forward that I don't know how to stop. I don't know how to be still. Nobody does at first, Sam said, but you learn. You have to. The storm howled outside. The fire crackled. And Maggie Collins, who hadn't let anyone see her cry since she was a girl, wept in front of a stranger who somehow didn't feel like a stranger at all. When morning came, the storm had blown itself out, leaving behind a world blanketed in white. Maggie woke early, her eyes still raw from the tears she'd shed the night before, and found Sam already up, coffee brewing on the stove. Sleep all right? He asked. Better than I have in months. He nodded and poured her a cup. They stood together at the window watching the sun rise over the snow-covered prairie, and for a moment Maggie let herself imagine a different life. A life where she didn't have to run. A life where her daughters could wake up every morning knowing they were safe. Sam? Yeah. Thank you. For everything. For the food, the shelter, for letting me. She struggled for words. For letting me be weak. I don't get to be weak very often. Ain't nothing weak about crying, Sam said. Takes strength to let yourself feel things instead of just pushing through. Emma stirred in the bed, sitting up and rubbing her eyes. Mama, is it morning? It's morning, baby. Did the storm stop? It stopped. Emma looked at the window at the pristine white world beyond it. Does that mean we have to leave? Maggie opened her mouth to say yes, but the word wouldn't come. She looked at Sam, who was watching her carefully. She looked at Lily, still sleeping peacefully. She looked at Emma, whose face was trying so hard to hide the fear. "Not today," she said. "We're going to stay a little longer. Is that okay?" Emma's whole face changed. The tension she'd been carrying, tension no 9-year-old should know, seemed to lift from her shoulders. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, Mama. That's okay." Maggie pulled her daughter close and held on tight while the sun rose over Wyoming and a new day began. She didn't know what came next. She didn't know if Robert was alive or dead, if they'd ever reach California, if anything would ever make sense again. But for the first time in months, she wasn't afraid of finding out. And somewhere in the back of her mind, in the place where hope had almost died, a small spark flickered back to life. Maybe this was what survival looked like after all. Not running, not fighting. Just accepting help when it was offered and trusting that tomorrow might be better than today. Maybe that was enough. For now at least it had to be. 3 days passed, then 4, then a week. Maggie kept telling herself she'd leave tomorrow. Tomorrow the weather would be better. Tomorrow the girls would be stronger. Tomorrow she'd have the courage to walk back out into the cold and keep chasing a man who might already be dead. But tomorrow kept becoming today, and today kept finding reasons to stay. "You're good with that needle?" Maggie looked up from the shirt she was mending, one of Sam's torn at the shoulder seam. He stood in the doorway, snow dusting his hat, a load of firewood in his arms. "My mother taught me." She bit off the thread and held up the shirt, examining her work. She said, "A woman who can't sew is a woman who'll always be cold." Wise woman. She had her moments. Sam set the wood by the hearth and brushed snow from his sleeves. Outside, another storm was building, the third since they'd arrived. Wyoming seemed determined to keep them here, and Maggie had stopped fighting it. "Emma asked me something this morning." Sam set his back to her as he stacked the logs. Maggie's hands stilled. "What?" "Asked if we were staying forever." The word hit Maggie like a fist. Forever. Her daughter was thinking about forever. "What did you tell her?" Sam turned to face her. "Told her that was her mama's decision to make, not mine." "Sam, I ain't pushing." He held up a hand. "I told you before you can stay as long as you need. That ain't changed. I just thought you should know what she's thinking." Maggie set down the mended shirt. Her chest felt tight, like there wasn't enough air in the cabin despite the fire burning steady and warm. "She's attached to you." "I know." "That's dangerous. When we leave, if you leave." Maggie's head snapped up. "What?" Sam crossed the room and sat in the chair across from her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "Maggie, I've been watching you for a week now. Watching you mend my clothes and teach your girls their letters and cook meals like you've been doing it in this kitchen your whole life. I've watched you laugh, actually laugh, for the first time since you got here. And I've watched those girls start to heal. We're grateful for the shelter. This ain't about gratitude." His gray eyes held hers. "This is about you running toward something that might not exist while leaving behind something that does." Maggie's throat closed. "You don't know that Robert's not—" "No, I don't, and neither do you, but I know what's in front of me. A woman who's stronger than anyone I've ever met. 2 girls who deserve a home, and a cabin that's been empty too long." The fire crackled. Somewhere outside, the wind picked up, howling across the prairie. "What are you saying?" Maggie whispered. "I'm saying you've got a choice. You can keep walking toward California, hoping Robert's there, hoping he wants you back, hoping everything works out." Sam paused. "Or you can stop walking. You can stay here, build something real, give those girls a home. With you, if you want." His voice was steady, but Maggie saw something flicker in his eyes. Vulnerability. Fear. Things she suspected Sam Thornton didn't show to many people. "I ain't proposing marriage. Not yet. I'm proposing a chance. Time to figure out what you want without starving or freezing while you do it." Maggie wanted to say yes. The word was right there pressing against her teeth, begging to be spoken. But something held her back. Something that felt like loyalty, or maybe just fear. "I need to know," she said, "about Robert. I need to know if he's alive, if he's waiting for us. I can't just give up." Sam nodded slowly. "I understand." "Do you? Better than you think." He stood moving to the window to watch the building storm. "When Catherine died, I wanted to follow her. Every day for a year I thought about walking into that prairie and letting the cold take me, but I didn't, because I'd made her a promise." "What promise?" "That I'd live, that I'd keep going, that I'd find something worth staying for." He turned back to face her. "She made me swear it on her deathbed, made me swear I wouldn't let her death be the end of me. And you kept that promise." "I'm trying to." He crossed back to her, knelt down so their eyes were level. "What I'm saying is I understand loyalty. I understand not being able to let go. But there's a difference between honoring someone and destroying yourself for them. Robert left you Maggie. Whatever his reasons, he left. And you've spent 4 months punishing yourself for his choice." Tears burned Maggie's eyes. "He might have had a reason. He might be a lot of things. But right now, today, he ain't here. I am." Sam's hand found hers, calloused and warm. "I ain't asking you to forget him. I ain't asking you to choose between him and me. I'm asking you to stop for a minute. Just stop. Let yourself breathe. Let yourself think about what you want, not what you think you owe." Maggie looked down at their joined hands. His fingers were rough from work, scarred from years of building and fixing and surviving. They looked nothing like Robert's hands, which had been soft, always reaching for something just out of grasp. "I don't know what I want," she admitted. "I've been so focused on moving forward that I forgot how to stand still." "Then learn." Sam squeezed her hand gently. "Stay through the winter. Spring comes if you still want to go to California. I'll help you get there. I'll give you provisions, money, whatever you need. But give yourself these next few months. Give your girls these next few months. Let them be children again instead of survivors." It was reasonable. It was kind. It was everything Maggie had stopped believing existed. "Why?" she asked, and her voice cracked. "Why do you care so much about what happens to us?" Sam was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Because you remind me that there's still good in this world. That people can go through hell and come out the other side still fighting, still loving, still trying to do right by the ones they love." He released her hand and stood. "And because I've been alone for 2 years, Maggie. 2 years of silence and empty rooms and talking to a photograph that can't talk back. You and those girls, you've made this place feel like a home again. I'm not ready to give that up." He walked to the door, pulled on his coat. "I need to check on the horses before the storm hits. Think about what I said." Then he was gone, leaving Maggie alone with the fire and the mending and a decision that felt too big to make. Emma appeared in the doorway to the bedroom, her dark eyes watchful. "I heard." Maggie's heart sank. "How much?" "Enough." Emma crossed to her mother and sat down in the chair Sam had vacated. "I like it here, Mama." "I know you do." "Lily does too. She talks now. She laughs. She hasn't had a nightmare in 4 days." Emma's voice was careful, measured, like she was presenting evidence in a case she desperately needed to win. "And you're different here. Less scared, less angry." "I'm not angry." "You were." Emma's eyes met hers. "You've been angry since Papa left. Angry at him for leaving. Angry at yourself for not stopping him. Angry at the world for being so hard." Maggie stared at her daughter. When had this child learned to see so clearly? "I didn't realize you noticed." "I notice everything." Emma's small hand found Maggie's. "I know you think you have to keep going. I know you think we have to find Papa. But Mama..." Her voice wavered. "What if he doesn't want to be found? What if we get to California and he's gone? Or what if he's there but he's different?" What if he doesn't want us anymore? The questions hung in the air, every one of them. A fear Maggie had been carrying for months. I don't know, Maggie whispered. But we know Sam wants us. Emma squeezed her hand. We know he's kind. We know he's real. Isn't that worth something? Maggie pulled her daughter close, breathing in the smell of her hair, feeling the solid warmth of her small body. This child had been through so much, had seen things no 9-year-old should see, had grown up too fast because the world had demanded it. When did you get so wise? Maggie murmured. I learned from watching you. They held each other while the storm began to rage outside, and Maggie felt something shift in her chest. Not a decision, not yet. But maybe the beginning of one. Maybe the first step toward accepting that running wasn't the same as surviving, and that standing still might be the bravest thing she'd ever done. The cabin door burst open and Sam stumbled in with the wind howling behind him. His face was pale beneath the cold. Riders coming, he said. Half a dozen of them moving fast from the south. Maggie's blood went cold. Who? Don't know yet. Sam crossed to the mantel and took down his rifle. Could be travelers looking for shelter. Could be something else. He met her eyes. Take the girls to the bedroom. Bar the door from inside. Don't come out until I tell you it's safe. Sam? Now Maggie. She didn't argue. She grabbed Emma's hand and ran for the bedroom where Lily was still sleeping. Woke her quickly, quietly pulled both girls into the corner farthest from the door. Mama, what's happening? Lily's voice was thick with sleep and fear. Shh, we need to be quiet. Can you do that for me? Lily nodded her thumb, finding her mouth that old habit she'd outgrown, but had returned to during the hard months. Through the thin walls, Maggie heard hoofbeats, voices, men's voices rough and loud. Thornton, we know you're in there. Sam's voice steady as always. What do you want? Word is you've got company. A woman and 2 little girls. Pretty valuable cargo these days. Maggie's stomach turned to ice. They were looking for them. Somehow someone had seen them, had told someone else. And now, I don't know what you're talking about. Laughter. Cruel, knowing laughter. Come on now, Thornton. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. We ain't here to hurt anybody. Just doing a job. Someone's paying good money for information about a woman traveling west with 2 children. Brown hair thin as a rail, 2 girls under 10. Emma's hand tightened on Maggie's. Papa, she breathed. The same thought had occurred to Maggie. Robert. Had Robert sent people looking for them? Was he alive after all? Trying to find them? But something in those voices said otherwise. Something that made her skin crawl. Whoever's paying you, Sam said, they can go to hell. There's no woman here, no children, just me and my livestock. We can check for ourselves. You can try. The sound of a rifle cocking. But the first man who sets foot on my property uninvited is going to find out how good my aim is. Silence. Long, terrible silence. Then, have it your way, Thornton. But this ain't over. Winter's long, and we've got plenty of time. Hoofbeats again, moving away, fading into the howl of the storm. Maggie didn't move, didn't breathe. Not until the bedroom door opened and Sam stood there, rifle still in his hands, his face grim. They're gone, for now. Who were they? Maggie's voice shook. What did they want? Sam set the rifle down and crossed to her, kneeling in front of where she huddled with the girls. I don't know, but someone's looking for you. Someone with money enough to hire men to search in the middle of winter. Robert. Maybe, or maybe someone else. Sam's jaw tightened. You owe anyone money. Cross anyone you shouldn't have. Maggie shook her head. No, I mean we lost the farm to the bank, but that was months ago. Why would they send people after us now? I don't know. Sam stood. But until we figure it out, you're not leaving this cabin. Not you, not the girls. Understood. Sam, I can't put you in danger. If they're after us, then they're after me now too. His voice was firm. I made a choice when I brought you in from that cold. I made it again when I told those men you weren't here. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Together. The word wrapped around Maggie like armor. Why would someone be looking for us? Emma asked, her voice small. We haven't done anything wrong. Maggie pulled her close. I don't know, baby, but we're going to find out. The storm raged through the night and into the next day. Sam took turns watching through the window rifle, always within reach. Maggie tried to keep the girls calm, tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy, but fear had settled into the cabin like a fifth presence. Tell me about your husband, Sam said on the second night when the girls had finally fallen asleep. Everything, even the parts you don't want to say. Maggie stared into the fire. She'd been dreading this conversation. Robert was a dreamer, she said slowly. That's what I loved about him at first. He could look at a barren field and see a garden, look at a run-down cabin and see a home. He made me believe anything was possible. But dreams don't pay debts. Dreams don't put food on the table. Maggie's hands twisted in her lap. When the farm started failing, Robert couldn't accept it. He kept borrowing money, kept making promises he couldn't keep. By the end, we owed half the county. The bank took everything. Everything except the clothes on our backs and what little I could carry. Maggie's voice hardened. Robert stood there while they boarded up our home. Stood there and watched like it was happening to someone else. Then he looked at me and said he was going to fix it. Said California would change everything. And you believed him. I wanted to. God help me, I wanted to. Tears burned her eyes. But I think part of me knew. Part of me knew he was running away, not running toward. He couldn't face what he'd done. Couldn't face me, face the girls, face the fact that his dreams had destroyed us. Sam was quiet for a long moment. You think those men have something to do with the debts? Maybe. There was a man back in Ohio, a moneylender Robert borrowed from when the bank wouldn't give us any more. His name was Silas Crane. Robert said he was reasonable, said the terms were fair. Maggie shook her head. But after Robert left, Crane came to see me. Told me the debt was still owed. Told me if I didn't pay there would be consequences. What kind of consequences? He didn't say, but the way he looked at me. Maggie shuddered. I left the next day. Didn't tell anyone where we were going. Just packed what we could carry and started walking. Sam's expression had gone cold. This Crane, what does he look like? Tall, thin, wears a black coat always, has a scar running from his ear to his jaw. The man leading those riders tonight, he had a scar just like that. Maggie's blood turned to ice. You're sure? I'm sure. She pressed her hand to her mouth, fighting back the scream that wanted to tear loose. He'd found them. After all these months, all these miles, Silas Crane had found them. We have to leave, she said. Tonight. Right now. If Crane knows we're here, you ain't going anywhere. Sam's voice was steel. Not in this storm, not with those men out there waiting. You step foot outside this cabin, they'll have you before you make it a mile. But if we stay, they'll come back. They'll hurt you. Let them try. Sam moved to her, took her hands in his. Listen to me. Crane wants money, right? That's what this is about. Yes. Robert owed him almost $200. I've got money, saved up over the years. I can pay the debt. No. Maggie pulled her hands free. Absolutely not. I won't let you. It ain't your choice. Sam's jaw was set. I've got money sitting in a box under the floorboards doing nobody any good. If spending it means keeping you and those girls safe, that's what I'll do. Sam, you don't understand. Crane isn't just a moneylender. He's evil, truly evil. He doesn't just want the money. He wants to break people. He destroyed families back in Ohio. Took their land, their homes, their dignity. He won't just accept payment and walk away. Then we make him walk away. Sam's eyes were fierce. I've faced worse than some money-grubbing vulture in a black coat. I've faced cannon fire and cavalry charges and men trying to kill me for nothing more than the color of my uniform. Silas Crane is just a man, and men can be stopped. Maggie wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that Sam's strength and certainty could stand against the darkness that had been chasing them for months. But she'd seen what Crane could do. She'd watched him smile while families begged for mercy. She'd heard the stories of people who'd crossed him and disappeared. "He'll hurt you," she whispered. "He'll hurt you to get to me. Then he'll have to go through me to do it." Sam cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. "I've spent 2 years with nothing to protect, nothing to fight for. You and those girls. You've given me a reason to keep going. And I'll be damned if I let some piece of dirt from Ohio take that away." Maggie's tears fell freely now. "I'm not worth dying for." "That's where you're wrong." Sam's thumb brushed away her tears. "You're worth everything. Everything I've got. Everything I am. And if Silas Crane wants to test that, he's welcome to try." They stood there in the firelight, closer than they'd ever been, and Maggie felt something break open in her chest. Not fear, not grief. Something else. Something that felt terrifyingly like hope. "Sam?" The sound of breaking glass cut her off. Maggie spun to see flames licking through the window, a burning torch thrown from outside. Within seconds, the curtains were ablaze. "Girls!" Maggie screamed, running for the bedroom. Sam was already moving, grabbing a blanket to beat at the flames. But more torches came crashing through windows, rolling across the floor. The cabin was burning. Maggie burst into the bedroom, found Emma already awake, Lily crying in her arms. "Out! Now! Through the back!" They ran. Through the small door Sam had built for emergencies, out into the howling storm. The cold hit them like a wall, but Maggie didn't stop. She pulled the girls through the snow, away from the burning cabin, away from the men she could hear shouting in the darkness. "Thornton!" Crane's voice high and sharp. "Come out! Bring the woman, and the debt's forgiven." A rifle shot. Another. Sam was fighting back. "Mama, we can't leave him." Emma struggled against Maggie's grip. "We can't. We have to. He told us to run. We have to run." "No!" Emma tore free and started back toward the cabin. Maggie caught her, held her tight despite her struggles. "Emma, listen to me. Listen. Sam is trying to protect us. The best way to help him is to get away. If Crane catches us, Sam's fight means nothing." Emma stopped struggling. Her face was wet with tears and snow. "But I love him," she whispered. "I love him, Mama. He's supposed to be our family." Maggie's heart shattered. "I know, baby. I know." She pulled both girls close and ran. Ran through the storm, through the darkness, through the fear that threatened to swallow her whole. She didn't know where she was going, didn't know if Sam was alive or dead, didn't know if they'd survive the night. But she kept running, because that's what mothers did. They ran. They fought. They survived. Behind them the cabin burned. The sounds of fighting faded into the howl of the wind. And Maggie Collins, who'd spent 4 months learning that the world was cruel and kindness was rare, prayed for the first time since her husband walked away. "Please, please, let him live. Please let this not be the end." The storm swallowed them. The darkness pressed close. And somewhere in the distance, a rifle fired one last time. Then silence. Maggie kept running. She didn't know how long they struggled through the snow. Minutes, hours. Time lost meaning in the darkness and cold. All that mattered was moving, one foot in front of the other. Don't stop. Don't think. Just move. Lily had stopped crying, which scared Maggie more than the tears. The child was limp in her arms, barely conscious, her small body losing heat faster than Maggie could replace it. Emma. Emma, stay with me. I'm here, Mama. Emma's voice was thin, exhausted, but she kept walking, kept pushing forward. They needed shelter, needed warmth, needed somewhere to hide before the cold killed them, or Crane's men found them. A light appeared through the snow. Dim at first, then brighter. A building. A house. Maggie pushed toward it with the last of her strength. Her legs gave out at the door. She fell against it, pounding with frozen fists. Please, please help us. The door opened. A woman's face, middle-aged, hard but not unkind. Lord have mercy, James, get blankets. Hands pulled them inside. Warmth wrapped around them. Voices spoke words Maggie couldn't understand. The children. We've got them. We've got them. The world went gray, then black, and Maggie Collins, who'd fought for 4 months to keep her daughters alive, finally let herself fall. She woke to firelight and the smell of coffee. For a moment, she thought she was back in Sam's cabin. But the ceiling was different. The bed was different. Everything was different. Easy now. A woman's voice, the same one from before. You're safe. You're at the Brennan Ranch about 4 miles north of the Thornton place. Maggie sat up too fast. Her head spun. My girls, sleeping in the next room, warm and fed and safe. The woman pressed a cup into Maggie's hands. Drink. You're half frozen. Sam Thornton. Is he? The woman's face tightened. We don't know yet. My husband James rode out at first light to see what was left of the cabin. Saw the smoke last night but couldn't get through the storm. There were men. They burned it. They were trying to... I know. The woman sat down on the edge of the bed. I'm Ruth Brennan, Sam's nearest neighbor. He's a good man. Stubborn as a mule, but good. He was fighting them, giving us time to run. I don't know if he... Maggie's voice broke. Ruth's hand found hers, surprisingly gentle. Sam Thornton survived things that would have killed most men. If anyone could make it through last night, it's him. But the cabin, it was burning. And there were so many of them. Then we'll hope for the best and prepare for the worst. Ruth's eyes were kind, but practical. For now, you need to rest. Your girls need their mother strong, not collapsed from exhaustion. Maggie wanted to argue, wanted to get up, go back, find Sam. But her body wouldn't cooperate. The cup shook in her hands, and she could barely keep her eyes open. Who were those men? Ruth asked quietly. Why are they after you? A debt. My husband owed money to a man named Silas Crane. He's been hunting us since Ohio. Ruth's expression darkened. Silas Crane. I've heard that name. Bad business. You know him. Know of him. He's been working his way west, buying up debts, collecting by any means necessary. Some say he's got connections to worse things, slavery rings, trafficking. The kind of man who sees people as property. Maggie's blood went cold. He wanted me. He told Sam to bring me out and the debt would be forgiven. That ain't about debt, honey. Ruth's voice was grim. A man like Crane, $200 ain't worth burning down cabins and chasing women through snowstorms. He wants something else. Something he thinks you can give him. I don't have anything. You've got yourself. You've got 2 daughters. Ruth's meaning was clear, and Maggie felt sick. There's men who pay good money for certain kinds of cargo. Women, children, especially ones no one will miss. The room tilted. Maggie thought she might vomit. He's been hunting us, she whispered. All this time. Not for money. For whatever he could sell you for. Ruth's hand tightened on hers. But he hasn't got you. And as long as there's breath in my body, he won't. The door opened, and a man came in tall, weathered with snow melting in his beard. His expression made Maggie's heart stop. James? Ruth stood. What did you find? Cabins gone, burned to the foundation. James removed his hat, wouldn't meet Maggie's eyes. Found signs of a fight, blood in the snow, but no body. Sam's alive. Hope surged through Maggie's chest. Maybe. Or maybe they took him. Tracks led south, but the snow covered most of it. James finally looked at her, and his face was heavy with sympathy. I'm sorry, ma'am. I know he meant something to you. Meant something. Sam Thornton had given her shelter when she had none, had fed her children when they were starving, had stood between them and evil with nothing but a rifle and his own stubborn courage. He'd meant everything. I have to find him, Maggie said, throwing off the blankets. If Crane has him, you'll do no such thing. Ruth pushed her firmly back down. You go running off half dead into a blizzard, you'll be caught within the hour, and then who'll protect those girls? But Sam would want you to stay alive, would want you to keep those children safe. Ruth's voice softened. I know it's hard. I know you want to fight. But sometimes the bravest thing you can do is wait. Let us handle this. Handle it how? James spoke up. I've sent word to town. Sheriff Dawson's a good man, honest. If there's raiders operating in the territory, he'll want to know. And if Sam's alive, if they're holding him somewhere, Dawson will find him. It wasn't enough. It wasn't nearly enough. But Maggie looked toward the door, toward the room where her daughters were sleeping, and knew Ruth was right. She couldn't help Sam if she was dead. Couldn't protect Emma and Lily if Crane caught her. The best thing she could do right now was stay hidden, stay safe, and trust that the people trying to help knew what they were doing. Okay, she whispered, and the word tasted like surrender. The days that followed were the longest of Maggie's life. She helped Ruth with the household work, needing something to do with her hands, while her mind raced with fear. Emma stayed close, rarely speaking, her eyes haunted by what she'd seen. Lily had retreated into silence again, communicating only in nods and headshakes. News came in fragments. The sheriff had sent men to search. They'd found the trail leading south, then lost it at a river crossing. No sign of Sam. No sign of Crane. It's like they vanished, James reported after returning from town. Nobody's seen anything. Nobody's talking. Because they're scared, Ruth said. Crane's got a reputation. Cross him and bad things happen. Maggie thought about that. About what it meant that one man could inspire such fear. About what it meant that Sam had stood against him anyway. He knew, she said softly. Sam knew what Crane was capable of, and he still fought. Still gave us time to run. That's the kind of man he is. Ruth handed her a cup of tea. The question is, what kind of woman are you? Maggie looked up. What do you mean? I mean, Silas Crane is out there somewhere. He's got Sam if Sam's still alive. He's got resources and men and no conscience to speak of. And he's still looking for you. Ruth sat down across from her. So what are you going to do about it? I don't know. Yes, you do. Ruth's eyes were sharp. You've been thinking about it since the moment you woke up in my house. You've been thinking about how you'd get him back if you could, how you'd make Crane pay for what he's done. Maggie's hands tightened on the cup. Even if I wanted to fight, what could I do? I'm one woman. I have no weapons, no money, no... You've got yourself, your mind, your will. Ruth leaned forward. I've watched you, Maggie Collins. You walked across half the country with 2 children and nothing but your own stubbornness. You survived things that would have broken most people. Don't sit there and tell me you're helpless. But Crane is just a man, an evil man maybe, but still just a man. And men have weaknesses. They make mistakes. They underestimate women. Ruth's smile was cold. That's how we beat them. By being smarter, by being patient, by waiting for our moment. Maggie thought about that. About all the times she'd been dismissed, overlooked, treated like she was invisible because she was female and poor and desperate. About how that invisibility had let her slip past danger more than once. You have a plan, she said slowly. I have an idea. Ruth pulled a folded paper from her pocket. James found this in town. Reward notice posted just this morning. Maggie took the paper. Read it once, twice, 3 times, unable to believe what she was seeing. Wanted Silas Crane for murder, kidnapping, and crimes against humanity. $500 reward. Dead or alive. Contact U.S. Marshal Service, Denver Territory. He's wanted, she breathed. By the federal government. Seems Crane's activities have finally attracted the wrong kind of attention. There's a marshal in Denver putting together a case. They're looking for witnesses, for people willing to testify. And you think I could? I think you know more about Silas Crane than you realize. The debt, the threats, the way he operates. And I think if you told your story to the right people, it could help bring him down. Maggie's mind raced. It was dangerous. Beyond dangerous. If Crane found out she was helping the marshals. But if Crane caught her anyway, she was dead. Or worse than dead. At least this way her death might mean something. Might help stop him from hurting anyone else. What about Sam? She asked. If Crane has him, then bringing down Crane is the only way to save him. Ruth's hand covered hers. You can't fight Crane alone, but the U.S. Marshals can. Let them help. Let them be the weapon you need. The fire crackled. Outside, the wind was finally dying down, the storm passing after 3 long days. Maggie thought about her daughters sleeping in the next room. About Sam, wherever he was, whatever was being done to him. About all the choices that had led her here to this moment, to this decision. She'd spent months running. Running from Crane, running from her past, running from the truth of what her life had become. Maybe it was time to stop running. Maybe it was time to fight. Where do I find these marshals? She asked. And Ruth Brennan smiled. The marshal's name was Thomas Harker, and he arrived at the Brennan Ranch 3 days after Ruth sent word to Denver. He was younger than Maggie expected, maybe 35, with sharp eyes that missed nothing, and a quiet way of speaking that made every word feel important. Mrs. Collins. He removed his hat as he entered the kitchen. I understand you have information about Silas Crane. I have more than information. Maggie set down the cup she'd been washing. I have a reason to see him hang. Harker's eyebrows rose slightly. That's direct. I've spent 4 months running from that man. He burned down the home of someone I care about. He's hunting my daughters. Maggie's voice didn't waver. So yes, Marshal, I'm direct. I don't have time to be anything else. Ruth had taken the girls outside to feed the chickens, giving them privacy. Maggie was grateful. Emma didn't need to hear this. Lily certainly didn't. Tell me everything, Harker said, sitting down across from her. From the beginning. So Maggie did. She told him about the debt, about Crane's visit to the farm after Robert left, about the way he'd looked at her, the things he'd implied, the threat that had driven her to run. She told him about the months of travel, the near misses, the growing certainty that Crane wasn't just collecting money, he was collecting people. When she finished, Harker was silent for a long moment. You're right, he said finally. This isn't about debt. Crane's been running a trafficking operation for years. Women, children, anyone vulnerable enough to disappear without questions. He sells them to mining camps, brothels, worse. We've been building a case, but witnesses keep vanishing. Because he kills them. Because he makes examples of them. Harker's jaw tightened. But you survived. You got away. And if you're willing to testify, we might finally have enough to bring him down. I'll testify. Maggie didn't hesitate. But there's something else. He has someone. A man named Samuel Thornton. He was protecting us when Crane's men came. The rancher whose cabin burned. Yes, if Sam's still alive, Crane has him. And I need to know. Maggie's voice broke slightly. I need to know if there's any way to get him back. Harker studied her face. Whatever he saw there made his expression soften. You care about this man. He saved my life. He saved my daughters. He stood against Crane knowing what it would cost. Maggie met the marshal's eyes. So yes, I care about him, and if there's any chance of bringing him home, I'll do whatever it takes. Harker was quiet for a moment, considering. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a folded map. We've been tracking Crane's operation for months. We know he has a base somewhere in the territory, a place where he holds people before moving them south. He spread the map on the table. Based on witness accounts, we think it's here. Old mining camp abandoned about 5 years ago. Remote, hard to reach, perfect for someone who doesn't want to be found. Maggie studied the location. It was maybe 40 miles from the Brennan Ranch, deep in the mountains. If Sam's alive, that's where he'd be. Most likely. Harker folded the map. I've got men gathering in Denver. We're planning a raid, but it'll take time to coordinate. A week, maybe more. A week. Maggie's stomach dropped. He might not have a week. I understand, but rushing in without proper support would be suicide. Crane's got men-weapons fortifications. We need numbers on our side. And while we wait, Sam suffers, or dies. Harker didn't have an answer for that. Because there wasn't one. Not a good one, anyway. That night, Maggie couldn't sleep. She lay in the darkness listening to her daughters breathe and thought about Sam. About what Crane might be doing to him. About whether he was still alive at all. She thought about what Ruth had said. About being smarter, being patient, waiting for the right moment. But she also thought about Sam standing between her and those riders, rifle-raised voice steady. About the way he'd said, "Whatever comes next, we face it together." He hadn't waited. He hadn't been patient. He'd fought because fighting was the only option that mattered. Maybe she needed to do the same. She slipped out of bed before dawn, moving quietly so as not to wake the girls. Ruth was already up, stoking the fire in the kitchen. Couldn't sleep. Maggie shook her head. I need to ask you something. Ask. Do you have a gun? One I could borrow? Ruth's hands stilled on the poker. She turned slowly, her eyes sharp. What are you planning? I'm planning to get Sam back. Alone against Crane and all his men. If I have to. Maggie's chin lifted. The marshal wants to wait a week. Sam might not have a week. And even if he does, I can't just sit here while he's suffering for protecting us. Ruth studied her for a long moment. Then she set down the poker and crossed to the cabinet in the corner. I was 18 when I came west, she said, opening the cabinet. Young and stupid, and convinced I could handle anything. 2 months after we arrived, James was thrown from a horse. Broke his leg so bad we thought he'd lose it. I had to defend this homestead alone for 3 weeks while he healed. She pulled out a rifle, checked the chamber. I learned a lot in those 3 weeks about what a woman's capable of when she has no choice. She held the rifle out to Maggie. You know how to shoot. Sam taught me some. Enough to hit what I'm aiming at. Then take this. And take this too. Ruth handed her a smaller pistol, one that could be hidden in a coat pocket. James will ride with you. He knows those mountains better than anyone. But Maggie, I know the risks. Do you? Because if this goes wrong, those girls in there lose their mother. They'll have no one. Maggie looked toward the bedroom where Emma and Lily slept. Her heart ached with the weight of the choice she was making. If I don't try, she said quietly, they'll have a mother who abandoned the man who saved them. They'll learn that good people can be sacrificed because fighting for them is too hard. She met Ruth's eyes. I won't teach them that. I won't be that woman. Ruth nodded slowly. Then God go with you. And bring that stubborn fool home. They left at first light, Maggie and James riding hard toward the mountains. The cold was brutal, the wind cutting through every layer, but Maggie barely felt it. All she could think about was Sam. Was he cold? Was he hurt? Was he even still alive? You love him. James said it as a statement, not a question. I don't know what I feel. Maggie kept her eyes on the trail. I know he's a good man. I know he didn't deserve what happened. I know I couldn't live with myself if I didn't try. Sounds like love to me. Sounds like obligation. Same thing sometimes. They rode in silence after that, the mountains growing larger as they approached. James led them on paths that seemed invisible trails only someone who'd lived here for years would know. The mining camp's over that ridge, he said as dusk began to fall. We should wait until full dark, move in when they're not expecting. How many men does Crane have? Hard to say. Maybe a dozen, maybe more. And there's 2 of us. Which is why we're not fighting, we're sneaking. James tied off his horse in a sheltered hollow. You get in fine, Thornton, get out. I'll create a distraction on the far side, draw their attention. With luck, you'll be gone before they know what's happening. And without luck, James handed her the pistol she'd tucked away. Without luck, you make every shot count. The mining camp materialized out of the darkness like a nightmare-given form. Wooden structures sagging with age, a few fires burning low, the shapes of men moving between shadows. Maggie counted at least 8 before she lost track. 8 men. 1 rifle, 6 bullets in the pistol. This was madness. But somewhere in there, Sam was waiting. And she hadn't walked across half the country. Hadn't survived everything she'd survived just to stop now. She waited until James's distraction came. A sudden shout from the far end of the camp. The crack of gunfire, men running toward the noise. Then she moved, slipping between buildings, staying low, searching for anything that looked like a prison. A voice stopped her cold. I knew you'd come. Maggie spun. Silas Crane stepped out of the shadows, a thin smile on his scarred face. Behind him, 2 men with rifles. Predictable as always, Mrs. Collins. The righteous ones always are. He moved closer, and Maggie forced herself not to retreat. Your husband was the same. So certain he could outsmart me. So certain he could run far enough, fast enough. Maggie's blood froze. Robert? Didn't make it to California, I'm afraid. Got as far as Nevada before my associates caught up with him. Crane's smile widened. He begged at the end. Begged me to spare his family. I told him I would if he gave me what I wanted. He didn't have it, of course. So here we are. Robert was dead. Had been dead for months, maybe, since before she'd even left Ohio. Everything she'd been walking toward, everything she'd been hoping for, it had never existed. You murdered him. I collected a debt. There's a difference. Crane gestured to his men. Take her, and bring her to the others. I think our guests should see what happens to people who try to run. Rough hands grabbed Maggie's arms. She struggled, but there were too many of them, too strong. They dragged her across the camp, toward a building larger than the others, kicked open the door, threw her inside. She hit the floor hard, the breath knocked from her lungs. And then she heard it. Maggie! She looked up, and there was Sam. He was chained to the wall, his face bruised and bloody, one eye swollen shut, but alive. God in heaven, he was alive. Sam! She scrambled toward him, her hands finding his face. Sam, I'm here! I'm here! You shouldn't have come. His voice was ragged. Maggie, why? Because I couldn't leave you. Tears streamed down her face. Because you're worth fighting for. Because... How touching. Crane had followed them in standing in the doorway with his arms crossed. The desperate widow and the broken rancher. It's almost poetic. Let him go. Maggie turned to face Crane, putting herself between him and Sam. Your quarrel's with me. With Robert. Not with him. My quarrel is with everyone who crosses me. Crane moved closer. Mr. Thornton here killed 3 of my men during his heroic last stand. That's not something I can overlook. Then take me. Do whatever you want with me. Just let him go. Maggie, no. Sam tried to rise, but the chains held him down. An interesting offer. Crane studied her with cold eyes. But I think I'll keep you both. You'll fetch a good price together. The tragic lovers sold into servitude. My clients do appreciate a story. Something in Maggie snapped. All the fear, all the desperation, all the months of running and hiding and barely surviving it all, condensed into a single white-hot point of rage. She moved before she could think, her hand finding the pistol she'd hidden in her coat. She pulled it free, aimed it at Crane's chest. One more step, and I shoot. Crane stopped. For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Not fear, not quite, but surprise. Reassessment. You won't. You're not a killer, Mrs. Collins. I'm a mother. Maggie's hands were steady. I've spent 4 months watching my daughters starve. I've slept in ditches and begged for scraps and prayed for death because living hurt too much. You don't know what I am anymore. I'm not sure I do. Maggie. Sam's voice was low, urgent. Don't. He killed Robert. He was going to sell our daughters. He burned your home and beat you and would have done worse. Maggie's finger tightened on the trigger. Give me one reason not to pull this trigger. Crane's men had their rifles raised, but they hesitated. If they shot her, she'd still get a round off. Someone was dying either way. Because it won't change anything. Crane's voice was smooth, reasonable. Kill me, and my men kill you. Kill me, and the business continues under someone else. Kill me, and those daughters of yours become orphans. But you'd be dead. Yes, I would. Crane smiled. Is that worth dying for? The door behind Crane burst open. Gunfire erupted. Men shouted. Chaos exploded through the building. Maggie didn't think. She dropped to the ground, covered Sam's body with her own, and prayed. When the shooting stopped, she looked up to find Marshal Harker standing over Crane's body, smoke still rising from his pistol. Mrs. Collins. He holstered his weapon. I thought we agreed you'd wait. You thought wrong. Apparently. He moved to Sam, examining the chains. Keys. Someone find keys. How did you... Ruth Brennan has a louder voice than you'd think. She rode into town an hour after you left, raising hell until the whole territory knew what was happening. Harker found the keys on one of the fallen guards and unlocked Sam's chains. I gathered what men I could and rode hard. Looks like we made it just in time. Sam slumped forward, and Maggie caught him, his weight heavy against her. Blood soaked through his shirt, but he was breathing. He was alive. You came for me. His voice was barely a whisper. Of course I did. Could have gotten yourself killed. Could have. Didn't. Maggie held him tighter. You taught me that sometimes you have to fight. Sometimes waiting isn't an option. Sam laughed, then winced in pain. I taught you too well. Around them, Harker's men were securing the camp, rounding up Crane's surviving associates. It was over. After months of running, months of fear, it was finally over. Is he really dead? Maggie looked at Crane's body still crumpled on the floor. It's not a trick. He's really dead. Harker confirmed. And his operation dies with him. We've got records, names, locations. Every person he sold, every associate he worked with. We'll find them all. Maggie let out a breath. She felt like she'd been holding for 4 months. The weight of it, the constant terror, the never-ending running, it lifted off her shoulders like a physical thing. Can we go home? She asked, and then realized what she'd said. Home. Not California. Not some phantom destination she'd been chasing across the wilderness. Home was wherever Sam was, wherever her daughters were safe. Soon. Harker gestured to his men. Let's get you both somewhere warm first. They helped Sam onto a horse. Maggie rode beside him, refusing to let go of his hand even when the trail grew rough. Behind them, the mining camp burned Harker's men, ensuring that nothing remained of Crane's empire but ash. Maggie. Sam's voice was weak but clear. Save your strength. No, this is important. He squeezed her hand. What Crane said about Robert. Maggie's throat tightened. I know. I'm sorry. Don't be. She met his eyes. Robert left us a long time ago. He left us when he walked away in June. Learning he's dead doesn't change anything. It just ends the waiting. That's cold. That's honest. Maggie looked ahead at the trail at the mountains fading behind them. I spent months grieving a man who wasn't dead. Now he is, and I don't have any grief left. I used it all up on the living. Sam was quiet for a moment. Then, I'm glad you came for me. I'm glad you were worth coming for. Even though it was stupid and reckless. Especially because it was stupid and reckless. Maggie smiled through the tears streaming down her face. You said once that kindness takes courage, but so does fighting. So does refusing to give up on people even when every logical part of your brain says you should. I never said that. You lived it. Same thing. They rode on through the darkness, and somewhere ahead, dawn was coming. Maggie could feel it in the air, that subtle shift that happened just before the sun broke over the mountains. A new day, a new beginning. For the first time in 4 months, she believed there might actually be one. The girls were waiting when they arrived at the Brennan Ranch. Ruth had told them everything, that their mother had gone to save Sam, that she might not come back, that they needed to be brave no matter what happened. Emma ran out first, crashing into Maggie's legs with a force that nearly knocked her down. You came back. Her voice was muffled against Maggie's coat. You promised you wouldn't leave us, and you came back. I came back. Maggie knelt, pulling Emma close. I'll always come back. Lily hung back, watching with uncertain eyes. She'd retreated into silence again during the waiting, and Maggie's heart ached at the fear on her small face. Come here, baby. Maggie opened her arms. It's over. The bad man is gone. He's never going to hurt us again. Lily moved slowly, then faster, throwing herself into the embrace. And finally she spoke. Is Sam okay? Maggie looked over her shoulder at Sam, who was being helped off his horse by James and Harker. He was battered and bloody, barely able to stand on his own. But he met her eyes and smiled. Sam's going to be fine, Maggie said. We're all going to be fine. And for the first time, she believed it. The weeks that followed were quiet, in a way Maggie had forgotten existed. No running, no hiding. No constant fear gnawing at the edges of every thought. Just days that unfolded one after another, each one a little warmer than the last. Sam healed slowly. The beating Crane's men had given him had cracked 2 ribs and left bruises that turned every color of a sunset before finally fading. Ruth insisted he stay at the Brennan Ranch until he was strong enough to travel, and Sam was too weak to argue. Maggie stayed too. She told herself it was practical. The girls needed stability. Sam needed care, and she had nowhere else to go. But the truth was simpler than that. She stayed because leaving felt impossible, because every time she thought about walking away, something in her chest pulled tight and refused to let go. You're staring again. Sam's voice broke through her thoughts. Maggie blinked, realizing she'd been watching him from the doorway while he sat by the fire, a book open in his lap. I wasn't staring, I was thinking. About what? About how you still look terrible. Sam laughed, then winced, his hand going to his ribs. Careful, I'm fragile. You're stubborn is what you are. Maggie crossed to sit in the chair across from him. Ruth said you tried to help James with the horses this morning. I was bored. You collapsed. I was resting. There's a difference. Maggie shook her head, but she couldn't keep the smile from her face. This was who Sam was, too proud to admit weakness, too determined to stay still. She'd learned that about him in the weeks they'd been together. Learned a lot of things. Like the way he took his coffee black with a little bit of sugar he pretended he didn't want. Like the way he read to the girls at night, doing different voices for each character until Lily dissolved into giggles. Like the way he looked at Maggie sometimes when he thought she wasn't watching, like she was something precious he was afraid to reach for. "What are you going to do?" Sam asked quietly. "When I'm healed? When this is all really over?" Maggie had been avoiding that question for weeks. "I don't know. California's still out there, if you wanted to go." "Why would I go to California?" "Because that's where you were heading. That's where—" Sam stopped, his jaw tightening. "That's where Robert was supposed to be." Maggie finished for him. "Robert, who's been dead for months. Robert, who was never coming back even before Crane killed him." "Maggie." "No, let me say this." She leaned forward, her hands clasped in her lap. "I spent 4 months walking toward a ghost, 4 months dragging my daughters across the wilderness because I couldn't admit that my husband had abandoned us. And even now, even knowing he's dead, I don't feel what I should feel." "What do you feel?" "Relief." The word came out harsh, almost angry. "I feel relief that it's over, that I don't have to wonder anymore, that I can stop pretending there was something worth finding at the end of that road." Maggie's voice cracked. "What kind of person feels relief when they learn their husband is dead? A person who's been through hell." Sam's eyes were soft. "Maggie, you're not a monster for feeling what you feel. Robert left you. He made a choice, and that choice hurt you and your daughters. You're allowed to be angry at him. You're allowed to feel like his death was just the end of a story that stopped mattering a long time ago. But he was my husband. I loved him once. Once. Past tense." Sam shifted, grimacing slightly at the movement. "Love doesn't come with rules about how long it has to last. Sometimes it dies before the person does. That's not your fault. That's just life." Maggie wiped at her eyes. She'd been crying more lately, not from sadness exactly, but from release. All the emotions she had kept locked away for months were finally spilling out, and there was nothing she could do but let them. "I don't know who I am anymore," she whispered. "I was Robert's wife for 13 years. I was a farmer's wife, a mother, a woman with a home and a future. Now I'm— what? A widow with nothing. A refugee who got lucky. You're the woman who walked across half the country to keep her daughters alive." Sam's voice was firm. "You're the woman who faced down Silas Crane with a pistol and didn't flinch. You're the woman who came for me when everyone else said it was suicide." He reached out, took her hand. "You're Maggie Collins, and whoever you decide to be next is up to you. Not Robert. Not anyone else." Maggie looked at their joined hands. His fingers were rough, scarred, strong. So different from Robert's, which had always been soft, always reaching for dreams instead of realities. "I don't want to go to California," she said. "No. No. I want—" She took a breath. "I want to stop running. I want to build something instead of chasing something. I want my daughters to have a home, a real home, not a destination that keeps moving." "And what about you? What do you want for yourself?" The question hung in the air between them. Maggie looked at Sam, at his battered face, his steady eyes, the hope he was trying so hard to hide. "I want to figure that out," she said finally. "I want time to learn who I am when I'm not terrified, when I'm not starving, when I'm not just surviving." She squeezed his hand. "And I want you to be there while I do." Sam's breath caught. "Maggie, I'm not saying I know what this is. I'm not saying I'm ready for anything. But I know I don't want to leave. I know that when I think about the future, you're in it. And that scares me, because the last time I trusted a man with my future, he walked away and never came back. I'm not Robert. I know you're not. That's what scares me." Maggie pulled her hand free, stood up, paced to the window. "Robert was all dreams and promises. He made me believe in things that weren't real. And I followed him, trusted him, built a life around him, and it all fell apart. You think I'll do the same? I think I don't know how to trust anymore. She turned to face him. I want to. God, I want to. But there's this voice in my head that keeps saying, everyone leaves. Everyone disappoints. And if I let myself believe in you, if I let myself hope, and then you... Come here. Sam struggled to his feet, ignoring the pain in his ribs. Maggie moved to help him, and suddenly they were close, so close, she could see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes. I can't promise you forever, he said quietly. Nobody can promise that. People die. Things change. The world doesn't care about our plans. His hands found her shoulders, gentle but firm. But I can promise you today. I can promise that right now in this moment, there's nowhere else I want to be. No one else I want to be with. And tomorrow, if you'll let me, I'll promise the same thing again. That's not much. That's everything. Sam's forehead touched hers. Every day I get to wake up and choose you. Every day I get to prove that I meant what I said. That's not less than forever, Maggie. That's more. Because it's real. Because it's earned. Maggie closed her eyes. Her whole body was shaking with fear, with hope, with the overwhelming feeling of standing at the edge of something new. I'm broken, she whispered. There are pieces of me that I don't think will ever fit back together. I'm broken too. Maybe our broken pieces can fit together, make something new. She laughed despite herself, a wet, choked sound. That's either the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me, or the strangest. Can it be both? They stood there in the firelight holding on to each other, and Maggie let herself believe just for a moment that maybe this time things would be different. Maybe this time she'd found something real. The door burst open and Emma tumbled in, her face flushed with cold. Mama, Sam, come quick. Maggie pulled away, instantly alert. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Emma grabbed her hand, tugging her toward the door. Just come. You have to see. They followed her outside, Sam moving slowly with Maggie's support. The morning air was crisp, but no longer bitter. Spring was coming, finally melting the last stubborn patches of snow. And there in the yard of the Brennan Ranch was something Maggie hadn't expected. A wagon, filled with lumber tools supplies. James stood beside it, grinning. Surprise. What is this? Sam asked. This is your cabin, or it will be. Ruth emerged from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. We've been planning it for weeks. The whole community chipped in lumber from the sawmill, hardware from the general store, labor from anyone with 2 hands, and a free afternoon. Maggie stared at the wagon, then at Ruth. You're rebuilding Sam's cabin. We're helping you rebuild your home. Ruth's emphasis on the word was deliberate. Both of you. All of you. That's how it works out here. When someone loses something, the rest of us come together to help them get it back. Sam was speechless. Maggie could see him struggling, his throat working, his eyes bright. You didn't have to do this, he finally managed. Course we did. James clapped him on the shoulder, carefully avoiding the injured ribs. You've helped every family in this territory at one time or another. Helped us raise our barn. Helped the Millers through that fever last winter. Helped old widow Thompson fix her roof when she couldn't pay. You really think we'd let you face this alone? But the cost is covered. Marshal Harker put in a good word. Turns out the territorial government has a fund for victims of criminal activity. And you and Mrs. Collins here qualify about 10 times over. Lily appeared at Maggie's side, tugging on her sleeve. Does this mean we're staying? Maggie looked at Sam. At the hope in his eyes, the question he was too afraid to ask out loud. She knelt down to her daughter's level. Do you want to stay? Yes. Lily's voice was small but certain. I like it here. I like Ruth and James. I like Sam. She glanced at Sam shyly. He's nice to us. He makes you smile. Emma had come to stand beside them. I want to stay too, Mama. This feels like home. More than Ohio ever did. More than anywhere. Maggie looked at her daughters. At these two small, fierce survivors who had walked through hell beside her and come out the other side still capable of hope. They deserved a home. They deserved stability. They deserved to stop running. And so did she. She stood up and turned to Sam. Looks like we're staying. The smile that broke across his face was worth every mile, every hardship, every moment of terror and despair. It was the smile of a man who'd been alone for too long, who'd stopped believing in happiness, who'd just been given something to live for. Then let's build a home, he said. The work started the next day. Men arrived from all over the territory, ranchers, farmers, townspeople, even Marshall Harker, who'd delayed his return to Denver to help with the raising. They worked from dawn to dusk, their voices carrying across the valley as the frame took shape. Maggie worked alongside them. She couldn't do the heavy lifting, but she could hand up boards, hold nails, carry water to the thirsty workers. And when they needed a break, she cooked huge pots of stew and fresh bread coffee by the gallon. "You're good at this," Ruth observed one afternoon, watching Maggie manage the impromptu kitchen with efficiency. Feeding people, making them feel welcome. "I had practice. On the farm we used to host harvest dinners for all the neighbors." Maggie ladled stew into a bowl. "Seems like another lifetime now." It was another lifetime. This is the new one. Ruth took the bowl and handed it to a passing worker. "Have you thought about what you'll do once the cabin's built?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, Sam's got his ranching, but what about you? You'll need something of your own. Something that's yours." Maggie hadn't thought about it. She'd been so focused on surviving, on getting through each day, that the idea of a future, a real future with choices and possibilities, still felt foreign. "I don't know," she admitted. "Well, think about it." Ruth's eyes were knowing. "A woman needs her own purpose. Love is wonderful, but it can't be everything. You need something that belongs to you, something nobody can take away." That night, lying in the borrowed bed at the Brennan Ranch, Maggie thought about Ruth's words. What did she want? What was she good at? Who did she want to be? She thought about the farm in Ohio, about the life she'd built there before everything fell apart. She'd been good at managing things, the household, the accounts, the endless logistics of rural life. She'd been good at solving problems, at finding ways to make do with less, at turning nothing into something. And she'd been good at helping people. The neighbors who came to her for advice, the young wives who didn't know how to stretch a dollar, the church ladies who relied on her to organize every charity drive and community event. An idea began to form. Small at first, uncertain but growing stronger the more she thought about it. She fell asleep with a plan taking shape in her mind. 2 weeks later, the cabin was done. It stood on the same spot where the old one had been, but different, larger, more solid, built by a community instead of just one man. Sam stood in the doorway, looking at the finished structure with something like awe. "It's better than before," he said quietly. "More than I ever could have built alone." "That's the point." Maggie came to stand beside him. "You don't have to do everything alone anymore." He turned to look at her. "Neither do you." The girls ran past them, exploring every corner of the new space. Lily had already claimed a spot by the window where the morning sun would come in. Emma was examining the bookshelves Sam's neighbors had built into the wall, already planning how to fill them. "Sam." Maggie touched his arm. "I need to tell you something." "That sounds serious." "It is." She took a breath. "I've been thinking about what I want to do with my life. And I have an idea, but I need to know if you'd be all right with it." "Tell me." "There are people like me out there, women who've lost everything, families with nowhere to go. They're walking the same roads I walked, facing the same dangers, and most of them won't make it." Maggie's voice grew stronger. "I want to help them. I want to create a place, maybe here, maybe in town, where people can come when they have nothing. A place with food and shelter and help finding work, a way station for the desperate. Sam was quiet for a long moment. That's ambitious. I know, and it won't be easy. It'll take money and time and resources we don't have. But Ruth said the community pulls together here, and I thought maybe if I could get people to understand what it's like out there, what those families are facing, they'd want to help. You want to fight for people who can't fight for themselves. Yes. Maggie met his eyes. I know what it's like to be invisible. To be desperate and alone and certain that no one cares whether you live or die. Someone helped me when I needed it most. I want to be that person for others. Sam was silent for so long that Maggie began to worry she'd asked for too much. That he wanted a wife who'd be content to keep house and raise children, not someone with ambitions that reached beyond the homestead. Then he smiled, that slow, warm smile that transformed his whole face. When do we start? We. You think I'm going to let you do this alone? Sam shook his head. This cabin's too big for one family anyway. And I've got resources, land livestock connections in town. If we're going to help people, we should do it right. Sam, I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. He took her hands in his. Maggie, I've spent 2 years trying to figure out why I survived when Catherine didn't. What the point was of going on when everything I loved was gone. And now I know. The point is this. The point is you and those girls and whatever we build together. The point is taking all that pain and turning it into something that helps instead of hurts. Maggie felt tears streaming down her face. I don't deserve you. Yes, you do. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving it. He kissed her. Gentle at first, then deeper, and Maggie felt something inside her finally settle into place. Not happiness exactly, that would come later in degrees as the wounds healed and the future unfolded. But peace, acceptance, the knowledge that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. When they pulled apart, Emma was watching them from across the room with a knowing smile. Does this mean Sam's going to be our new papa? Maggie looked at Sam, who was looking at her waiting. Would that be okay with you? He asked Emma. If I was... Emma considered for a moment that serious way she had. Then she crossed the room and hugged him, careful of his still healing ribs. I already decided you were, she said. I was just waiting for you two to catch up. Lily joined the embrace, and then Maggie, and they stood there in their new home, 4 people who'd found each other in the darkness and refused to let go. Outside, spring was coming. The snow was melting. And somewhere in the distance, a bird was singing the first one Maggie had heard since November. It sounded like hope. It sounded like home. They were married on a Sunday in late April, when the wildflowers had just begun to bloom across the Wyoming prairie. It was a small ceremony. Ruth and James Marshall Harker, who'd come back from Denver for the occasion, a handful of neighbors who'd helped build the cabin. But it was enough, more than enough. Emma stood beside Maggie in a dress Ruth had sewn from fabric she'd been saving for something special. Lily held a bouquet of wildflowers she'd picked that morning, petals already wilting in her small fist. Do you take this, woman? The traveling preacher's voice carried across the spring air. Sam looked at Maggie, and his eyes held everything he couldn't say. All the loss, all the loneliness, all the years of wondering if he'd ever feel whole again. I do. And do you take this man? Maggie thought about the road that had brought her here. The hunger, the fear, the moment she'd crouched behind a stranger's barn, feeding her daughter's rotten apples because there was nothing else. She thought about a man who'd offered his coat and called it nothing, who'd stood between her family and evil without a moment's hesitation, who'd taught her what kindness looked like when it wasn't asking for anything in return. I do. Sam slipped the ring onto her finger, a simple band Ruth had helped him find in town. It wasn't much, but it was real. And real, Maggie had learned, was worth more than all the promises in the world. Then, by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife." The kiss was sweet and brief, appropriate for the children watching. But Sam's hand found hers and squeezed. And in that small gesture was everything. Every hope, every fear, every silent promise they'd made to each other in the weeks since the nightmare ended. "Mama's married," Lily announced to no one in particular, her voice ringing with joy. "We have a papa again." Emma rolled her eyes in that way she had, pretending to be too old for such excitement. But Maggie saw the tears she was trying to hide, saw the way her daughter looked at Sam with something she hadn't shown anyone since Robert left Trust. The celebration afterward was simple. Food and music and laughter, neighbors dancing in the spring evening while the sun set over the mountains. Sam danced with each of the girls, spinning them until they were dizzy with giggles. Maggie watched from the porch of their new home, her heart so full it hurt. Ruth came to stand beside her. "You did good, honey." "I got lucky." "Luck's got nothing to do with it. You survived. You fought. You earned this." Ruth's hand found hers. "Don't you ever let anyone tell you different." Maggie thought about that as the party wound down and the neighbors headed home and the girls finally collapsed into their beds, exhausted and happy. She thought about all the choices that had led her here, the wrong ones and the right ones, the moments of courage and the moments of despair. Every step of the journey had brought her to this place, to this man, to this life. Maybe Ruth was right. Maybe luck was just what people called the outcome when they couldn't see all the work that went into it. Summer came fast and hot, and with it, the first real test of Maggie's dream. A family appeared on the road one afternoon, a woman and 3 children walking the same path Maggie had walked months before. They were thin and hollow-eyed, their clothes in tatters, their faces marked by the same desperate hope Maggie remembered feeling when she'd first seen Sam's cabin. "Please," the woman's voice cracked. "My husband died on the trail. We have nothing. We've been walking for weeks." Maggie didn't hesitate. "Come inside." She fed them, washed their clothes, gave them the spare room she and Sam had built for exactly this purpose. And over the following days, she helped them find their footing work for the mother at the general store in town, a family willing to take in the oldest child as a helper. "How can I ever repay you?" the woman asked, the morning she finally left, her eyes red with tears. "You don't repay it." Maggie pressed a small pouch of coins into her hand, money from the fund she and Sam had started. "You pass it on. Someday when you're stable, when you're strong, you help someone else. That's how this works." The woman hugged her fiercely. "I thought we were going to die on that road. I thought no one cared." "I cared. I always will." Word spread. By fall, the Thornton homestead had become known as a place where the desperate could find help. Families passing through Wyoming stopped there, knowing they'd find a hot meal and a warm bed and someone who understood what they were facing. Maggie organized donations from the community, coordinated with the church in town, built a network of people willing to offer jobs and housing to those in need. "You're running a railroad," Sam observed one evening, watching her sort through a stack of letters from families asking for help. "Like the abolitionists, but for poverty." "I'm running a way station. That's what I'm calling it." Maggie set down her pen. "Every person we help is one less person who dies alone on the prairie. One less family torn apart by desperation. One less child eating rotten apples behind a stranger's barn." "Is that what you were doing when we met?" Maggie looked at him. In the months since their wedding, Sam had become more than a husband. He'd become a partner, working alongside her, supporting her vision, never once suggesting she should stay home and let him handle things. "That's exactly what I was doing. And if you hadn't stopped me, if you hadn't offered your coat and your stew and your heart..." She shook her head. "I don't know where we'd be. Dead probably, or worse." "Then I'm glad I found you." "You didn't find me. I found you." Maggie smiled. "I found you while I was stealing your apples." Sam laughed. "Best thief I ever met." The first snow came in November, exactly 1 year after Maggie had stumbled onto Sam's property with 2 starving daughters, and no hope left. She stood at the window of their cabin, their home, and watched the flakes fall, remembering. "Mama!" Emma appeared beside her taller, now her face losing the sharp edges of hunger that had defined it for so long. "Are you sad?" "No, baby, just thinking." "About what?" "About how different everything is. About how scared I was last year." Maggie put her arm around her daughter. "About how brave you were. Both you and Lily. I don't think I ever told you how proud I am." Emma leaned into her mother's side. "You told us every day. You just used different words." "Did I? Every time you got up when you were exhausted. Every time you found food when there wasn't any. Every time you kept walking when you wanted to stop." Emma looked up at her. "That was you telling us. That was you saying we mattered enough to fight for." Maggie's throat tightened. When had her daughter become so wise? "You matter more than anything," she said. "You and Lily. You're the reason I kept going." "I know. But you're the reason we made it." They stood there together watching the snow, and Maggie felt the year come full circle. This time last year, she'd been desperate and alone, certain that the world had nothing left to offer. Now she had a home, a husband, a purpose, and two daughters who were finally learning how to be children again. Winter passed more easily than any Maggie could remember. The cabin was warm, the pantry was full, and Sam's arms were waiting for her every night. She still worked hard. The way station had become a full-time endeavor with families arriving regularly throughout the cold months. But it was a different kind of hard. Meaningful. Chosen. "You're making a difference." Sam told her one evening as they sat by the fire after the girls had gone to bed. "You know that, right?" "I hope so. I see it in their faces. The people who come through here. They arrive looking like ghosts, and they leave looking like they might actually survive." He reached for her hand. "That's because of you. It's because of us. I couldn't do any of this without you." "Yes, you could. You were doing it long before you met me." Sam's thumb traced circles on her palm. "I just gave you a place to do it from. You gave me more than that. You gave me hope. You gave me a reason to stop running." Maggie met his eyes. "You gave me a family." Sam was quiet for a moment. Then, "There's something I've been wanting to ask you." "Ask." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object. When he opened his hand, Maggie saw it a tiny wooden horse, perfectly carved, the same one he'd been working on the night she first arrived. "You finished it." "Months ago, but I've been waiting for the right moment." Sam held it out to her. "This was for Lily. But now I'm thinking it should be for the baby." Maggie's heart stopped. "What?" "The baby. The one you've been carrying for the past 3 months." Sam's eyes were soft, knowing. "You thought I hadn't noticed." She stared at him. She'd only begun to suspect herself a few weeks ago, and she'd been trying to find the right time to tell him. Trust Sam to see what she tried to hide. "I wanted to be sure. I didn't want to get your hopes up if—" "Maggie." Sam pulled her close. "You're giving me everything I thought I'd lost forever. A wife, a family, children who call me Papa. And now this." His hand found her stomach, still flat, but holding the promise of something new. "This is more than hope. This is a miracle." Maggie let herself cry then. Let all the emotions she'd been holding back, the fear, the joy, the overwhelming gratitude, pour out of her. Sam held her through it, steady as always, his heartbeat a rhythm she'd learned to count on. "What if something goes wrong?" she whispered. "What if I lose it? What if—" "Then we face it together, same as everything else." Sam tilted her chin up, made her look at him. "I lost Catherine. I lost my first child. I know what that grief feels like. But I also know that fear of loss isn't a reason to avoid love. It's a reason to hold on tighter to the love you have." "I'm scared." "I know. Me too." He kissed her forehead. "But we'll be scared together. That's the only promise I can make. and it's the only one that matters. The baby came in July on a day so hot even the shade offered no relief. Ruth served as midwife, her steady hands guiding Maggie through the longest hours of her life. Sam paced outside wearing a path in the dirt, while Emma and Lily sat on the porch and tried not to look as terrified as they felt. "One more push, honey." Ruth's voice was calm, encouraging. "You're almost there." Maggie bore down every muscle in her body, straining, and then suddenly there was a cry, thin and sharp and absolutely beautiful. "It's a boy." Ruth lifted the squalling infant, cleaned him with practiced efficiency, and placed him in Maggie's arms. A healthy, perfect boy. Maggie looked down at her son. He was red-faced and furious, his tiny fists waving in protest at the indignity of being born. And he was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. "Sam." Her voice came out as a croak. "Bring Sam." He was there in seconds, his face white with worry until he saw her smile. Then his whole expression transformed. "Is that your son?" Maggie held the baby up. "Our son." Sam took him with hands that shook, cradling the infant like he was made of glass. For a long moment he just stared, tears streaming down his face. "I thought I'd never have this," he whispered. "I thought when Catherine died, when the baby died with her, that was it. That was all I'd ever get." He looked at Maggie. "Thank you for giving me this, for giving me everything." "What do we name him?" Emma asked from the doorway, Lily peeking around her sister's shoulder. Maggie and Sam exchanged a look. They'd discussed it during the long months of waiting, had talked about names that might honor the past while looking toward the future. "Robert," Maggie said, "for my first husband who was flawed but tried his best, and Thomas for the husband Sam lost who taught him how to keep promises." "Robert Thomas Thornton." Sam tested the name, rolling it around in his mouth. "It's strong. He'll need to grow into it." "He will." Maggie watched her husband hold their son, watched Emma and Lily crowd around to get a better look at their new brother. "He'll have plenty of people to teach him how." The years that followed were not easy. Nothing on the frontier ever was. There were hard winters and dry summers, sick livestock, and failed crops. There were nights when Maggie lay awake worrying about money, about the families they couldn't help, about the 1,000 ways the world could still hurt them. But there was also joy. More joy than Maggie had ever thought possible. She watched Emma grow into a young woman, sharp-minded and fierce, who eventually became a teacher at the school in town. She watched Lily bloom from a silent, frightened child into a warm and gentle soul who had a gift for soothing the scared families who arrived at their way station. She watched Robert take his first steps, speak his first words, ride his first horse, all the milestones she'd thought she might never see. And through it all, Sam was beside her, steady, faithful, present. Every morning he woke up and chose her again. Every night he fell asleep with his arms around her. He never made grand promises he couldn't keep. He just showed up day after day and proved that love wasn't about words. It was about action. "Do you ever think about Ohio?" he asked her one autumn evening years later as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "Sometimes." Maggie leaned against his shoulder. "But not like I used to. It feels like someone else's life now. Someone else's memories." "Do you miss it?" "I miss who I was before everything went wrong. I miss believing that hard work was enough, that good people got what they deserved." She sighed. "But I don't miss the illusion. I like who I am better now. Someone who knows how hard the world can be, but chooses to be kind anyway." "That's wisdom. That's survival. Same thing sometimes." Sam laughed. "I think you said that to me once, a long time ago." "Did I? I don't remember." "I do. I remember everything about those first days. The way you looked at me like I might be a trap. The way you argued about every little thing I tried to give you. The way you fell asleep at my table and I watched you breathe and thought maybe, just maybe, this was what I'd been waiting for." Maggie turned to look at him. His hair was gray now, his face lined with years of sun and wind. But his eyes were the same steady and kind and full of the quiet strength that had saved her all those years ago. "I was so afraid," she said. "So certain you were going to hurt us somehow. That's what the world had taught me to expect. And now I know better. Now I know that there are good people and bad people, and the only thing that matters is which one you choose to be." She took his hand. "You taught me that. You and your stubborn kindness. You taught yourself. I just gave you space to figure it out." Behind them, the cabin door opened, and Robert came out 12 years old now, and tall for his age. He had Sam's eyes and Maggie's determination, a combination that made him formidable. "Mama, Papa, Emma's here with her husband. They're asking if they can stay for dinner." Maggie smiled. "Tell them, of course. Tell them there's always room at our table." Robert ran back inside, and Maggie listened to the sounds of her family gathering. Emma's voice bright and commanding, her husband's quieter tones, Lily laughing at something Robert said, and underneath it all, the solid presence of the home they'd built together. "Full house tonight," Sam observed. "Full house every night if I had my way." Maggie stood pulling him up with her. "Come on, let's go feed our family." They walked inside together into the warmth and noise and beautiful chaos of a life neither of them had ever expected to have. And Maggie thought about the woman she'd been desperate starving, ready to die behind a stranger's barn, and marveled at how far she'd come. The way station was still running larger now, a permanent fixture in the territory. Hundreds of families had passed through over the years, and many had stayed building their own lives in the community that had grown up around the Thornton homestead. Every one of them was proof that kindness mattered, that one person's choice to help could ripple outward, touching lives in ways they'd never see. After dinner, after the dishes were done and the children were settled and the house was finally quiet, Maggie stepped outside one last time. The stars were bright overhead, and the air smelled like autumn wood smoke and dying leaves and the promise of winter to come. Sam followed her out, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "What are you thinking about?" "Apples." Maggie laughed at his confused expression. "I'm thinking about that day I was stealing your apples. How certain I was that we were going to die. How impossible it seemed that anything could ever get better. And now I'm thinking about how wrong I was. About how the worst moment of my life led to the best ones. About how I never would have found any of this if I hadn't lost everything first." Sam pulled her close. "That's the thing about rock bottom. Only place to go is up. Is that frontier wisdom? That's Thornton wisdom, passed down from my father who was wrong about almost everything but managed to get that one right." Maggie laughed again, and the sound carried across the prairie out into the endless darkness where families were still walking, still hoping, still searching for the same thing she'd found. Home wasn't a place. She knew that now. Home was a choice. Home was waking up every day and deciding to love the people around you, to fight for them, to build something together that was stronger than anything you could build alone. Home was standing in the arms of a man who'd offered a stranger his coat and called it nothing. Home was knowing that no matter how hard the world tried to break you, there was always a way back. Always a chance to start again. Always someone willing to open their door if you were brave enough to knock. "I love you." Maggie said the words simple and insufficient and absolutely true. "I love you too." Sam kissed the top of her head. "Now come inside. It's getting cold." They walked back into their home, into the warmth and light and love that waited there. And Maggie Collins, Thornton, who had once eaten rotten apples to survive, who had walked across half the country with nothing but her daughters and her stubbornness, who had learned that kindness was the strongest force in the world. Maggie closed the door behind her and smiled. The story that had started in desperation ended in grace. And that was more than enough. That was everything.